The Senate Banking Committee hearing room fell silent as Senator Marco Rubio leaned toward his microphone, his face showing clear frustration. The Florida Republican aimed his comments directly at Representative Jasmine Crockett, who had been invited to testify as an expert on disaster insurance reform. "Congresswoman," Rubio began, his voice carrying a sharp edge, "you're sitting there representing Dallas, speaking to Florida and other coastal states about insurance policies without fully understanding the challenges we face." As the C-SPAN cameras focused in, Rubio, an experienced senator and former presidential candidate, continued with firm remarks. "You're pushing for government mandates and regulations that could further weaken our insurance market," he said. "You support federal control that would reduce state authority, yet you present yourself as more informed than those of us who have worked on these issues for years." Members of the committee shifted in their seats as Rubio's tone grew stronger. Chairman Sherrod Brown tried to intervene, but Rubio gestured for him to wait. "The American people deserve clarity," Rubio stated. "Democrats like Representative Crockett are promoting one-size-fits-all insurance policies. While that may sound good, it would negatively impact homeowners in Florida and other coastal areas." During the exchange, Congresswoman Crockett stayed composed, calmly arranging her papers. The first-term Democrat from Texas showed no visible reaction to the criticism. What happened next changed the atmosphere in the room. Crockett had come prepared with detailed research on Florida's struggling insurance market, along with information on Rubio's own voting history related to disaster relief. Within moments, she was ready to respond using clear data to challenge his statements in front of a nationwide audience. Before moving forward, take a moment to like and subscribe so you don't miss updates on key political developments in Washington. Now, returning to the moment when Senator Rubio appeared confident, unaware that Crockett was about to redirect the discussion with verified facts. Rubio was not just any senator questioning a Democratic representative. At 53, the Florida Republican had built much of his reputation on defending his state from federal overreach. As a long-serving senator from a hurricane-prone region, he frequently pointed to his experience with disaster recovery to support his position. "The issues affecting Florida's insurance market," Rubio said, standing confidently in his tailored suit, "require specific solutions and a deep understanding of our state's conditions, not broad federal mandates from someone representing inland Texas, where hurricane risk is far lower." The hearing had originally been intended to address the national property insurance crisis, but Rubio had shifted it into a wider critique of Democratic reform proposals. Committee members were familiar with his confident speaking style and strong defense of Florida's independence, traits that often attracted media attention. Across the room sat Jasmine Crockett, a first-term Democratic representative from Texas's 30th District. At 42, the former civil rights attorney and state legislator had already established herself as a skilled legal mind with a strong presence during hearings. Unlike Rubio, Crockett had spent years representing clients in disputes with insurance companies before her election to Congress in 2022. The distinguished representative from Texas, Rubio continued with a hint of sarcasm, comes from a district that hasn't experienced the level of losses we've seen in Florida, yet she believes she can instruct us on managing our markets. Crockett remained steady, reviewing notes on her tablet. Unlike others who had faced Rubio's intense questioning, she appeared fully prepared. Her team had spent weeks gathering data on insurance system failures across states, with particular attention to Florida's situation and Rubio's own stance on reform. This hearing was about more than political disagreement. It focused on how the United States would respond to a growing crisis affecting millions of homeowners. Rubio argued that insurance regulation should stay under state authority, with limited federal involvement, while Crockett supported a stronger federal framework to stabilize markets and protect consumers. As tensions increased, Chairman Brown reminded the room that Rubio's time had expired. "I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman," Rubio responded. "But let's keep in mind that some of us understand these markets through real experience, not just theory." His Republican colleagues nodded in agreement, believing he had concluded effectively. However, Representative Crockett slowly closed her tablet, a slight, confident smile appearing on her face. This was the moment she had prepared for. "The chair recognizes Representative Crockett," Brown announced, his voice steady over the quiet discussions in the room. Crockett adjusted her microphone and began, her tone composed yet firm. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman," she said. "And thank you, Senator Rubio, for your passion. Insurance policy is an issue that should encourage strong debate," she continued. "But passion alone is not enough. We also need facts." The room became quiet as Representative Jasmine Crockett opened a large binder filled with tabs and charts. "Senator Rubio has made serious claims about my understanding of insurance challenges," she said, "particularly those affecting Florida. He suggested that my background limits my ability to fully understand what coastal states experience." Rubio leaned back in his chair, confident. He had heard similar responses before, what he viewed as standard Democratic arguments that, in his opinion, did not directly address his key points about state control and Florida's unique circumstances. Before addressing those remarks directly, Crockett continued, "It's important to provide context. Senator Rubio often points to his time representing Florida as giving him special insight into insurance issues. I respect that perspective," she said. "I genuinely do." Several Republican senators exchanged quick looks, noticing the shift in tone as Crockett continued steadily. "However, representing a state does not automatically mean understanding how failing insurance markets actually function," she said, her voice clear. "When millions of Americans are facing rising premiums or losing coverage, we need more than opinions. We need verified data." Rubio's posture stiffened. This was not the response he had expected. Many Democrats, when challenged, often turned to broader climate discussions, something he found easier to counter. Senator Rubio mentioned Florida's unique insurance challenges. Crockett went on. "He is correct about that. In preparation for this hearing, my team reviewed Florida's insurance market over the past 5 years, tracking premium increases, company failures, and policy cancellations." Rubio's expression tightened. The issue was politically sensitive in Florida, where several insurers had collapsed and costs had sharply increased. "We compared these figures to other coastal states with similar hurricane exposure," Crockett explained, handing documents to the committee clerk for distribution. "The findings are concerning." As senators reviewed the materials, quiet murmurs spread across the room. Rubio leaned toward a colleague, speaking quietly, his concern visible. A Democratic senator was heard saying, "These numbers don't seem accurate." "Point of order, Mr. Chairman," Rubio said, interrupting. "I object to this approach using materials that were not shared in advance. The Congresswoman should have submitted these documents earlier if she intended to discuss Florida in detail." Chairman Sherrod Brown responded with a slight frown. "The witness may refer to any publicly available data in her testimony." Crockett nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to clarify, all the information in this report comes from the Florida Office of Insurance Regulation, the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, and industry filings with the SEC. All sources are public and directly related to this issue, one that affects Senator Rubio's constituents." Rubio's expression grew more serious as Crockett continued. "Colleagues, please turn to page 3, she said, maintaining a confident tone. "According to Florida's official data, the average homeowner's insurance premium in the state has increased by 102% over the past 3 years, nearly 3 times the rate seen in other Gulf Coast states with similar storm risks." A noticeable reaction spread through the room. A Republican senator leaned toward Rubio, speaking quickly. "The report also shows that over the past 4 years, 15 insurance companies in Florida have become insolvent or left the market entirely," Crockett added. "As a result, more than 1.2 million homeowners have either lost coverage or have been moved into the state-backed Citizens Property Insurance Corporation." Cameras captured Rubio's growing concern as quiet discussions continued throughout the hearing room. He began writing notes, clearly preparing his response. "I'm not presenting this to criticize Floridians," Crockett clarified. "Insurance instability affects Americans across the country, coastal and inland. That's the key point. This is not a partisan issue. It reflects a market failure that requires comprehensive solutions." As she continued, Democratic members leaned forward, while some Republicans shifted in their seats. Rubio repeatedly tried to get the chairman's attention, appearing ready to interrupt. "What's especially important," Crockett went on, "is shown on page 5. Citizens Insurance, the state's insurer of last resort, now holds more than 1.4 million policies, an increase of over 300% in 4 years. It has become Florida's largest property insurer, which is the exact outcome Senator Rubio has often warned about. Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Rubio interrupted again. The witness is citing figures without addressing the full context of litigation and storm patterns. I'm quoting directly from Florida's Insurance Commissioner's report. Crockett responded calmly, lifting the document. If you'd like to review those additional factors, they are summarized on page 7. Chairman Brown cleared his throat. The witness may continue. Crockett turned another page. What is most concerning is this. Florida homeowners now pay the highest insurance premiums in the country, averaging about $6,000 per year, compared to a national average of roughly $2,100. And this happened even though Florida went 16 years without a major hurricane before 2017. Rubio's expression grew more tense as Crockett continued her structured, data-based testimony, but she was not finished. The witness's time has expired, Chairman Brown finally said, though somewhat reluctantly. I have additional material to share, Mr. Chairman. Crockett replied respectfully. Perhaps during the questioning period. The chair recognizes Senator Rubio for a response, Brown said, noting the senator's visible frustration. Rubio leaned forward. The Congresswoman has presented a selective view of Florida's insurance situation. He began, his tone controlled. She does not mention that much of this crisis is driven by excessive litigation, fraud, and the state's unique geography. Federal involvement will only make these issues worse. But Crockett had anticipated this response. As Rubio spoke, she passed another set of documents to the clerk, data comparing successful insurance reforms in other states. Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chairman. Crockett said immediately after Rubio finished. May I respond to the claims about my understanding of this issue? Chairman Brown, aware that the national audience was likely following closely, nodded. The witness is recognized for 5 minutes. The room grew quiet as Jasmine Crockett stood composed and confident. Her background as a courtroom attorney was clear in her steady posture and measured delivery. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Crockett began. Senator Rubio says I've presented a selective picture of Florida's challenges. Let's expand the view. She gestured toward the newly distributed packet. This second handout compares insurance reforms in states with similar coastal exposure and the outcomes they achieved. Rubio flipped through the pages, his discomfort becoming more noticeable. Senator Rubio has argued that Florida's situation is unique and that federal solutions would worsen it. Crockett continued. That claim deserves careful review. The data shows a different pattern. On page 2, you'll see how Louisiana, South Carolina, and Alabama, states also exposed to hurricanes, implemented targeted reforms that helped stabilize their markets. The room quieted further as members examined the documents. After Hurricane Katrina, Louisiana combined stronger building codes, mitigation incentives, and a state-backed system supported by federal coordination. The result was premium increases of about 12% over 3 years, compared to Florida's 102%. She continued, South Carolina introduced a mediation system for claims that reduced litigation by 60% while still protecting consumers. Cameras captured Rubio's reaction, as his expression shifted from surprise to visible concern. But the most important information is on page 4, Crockett said firmly. It outlines Senator Rubio's voting record on insurance reform and disaster mitigation funding. While he often highlights Florida's insurance crisis, he has voted against several key federal measures over the past decade that would have supported state insurance markets. She looked directly at Rubio. This includes votes against reauthorizing the National Flood Insurance Program, against increasing FEMA pre-disaster mitigation funding, and against the Disaster Recovery Reform Act, measures that could have helped Florida homeowners and insurers better manage risk. Then Crockett added a more direct point. What is particularly concerning is that while insurance premiums in cities like Miami, Tampa, and Orlando have tripled for many families, Senator Rubio has received over $2.3 million in campaign contributions from the insurance industry, placing him among the top recipients in the Senate. She held up printed campaign finance records. These are public disclosures, not partisan claims. Murmurs spread across the committee as Crockett reviewed Rubio's record with steady precision. Each documented vote and reference was presented clearly. The question isn't whether Florida faces unique challenges. Of course it does, she said. The real question is why Senator Rubio has opposed solutions that have worked in other coastal states and has not offered clear alternatives for his constituents. Crockett continued, pointing to page 7. Here is a quote from Florida's former insurance consumer advocate. This crisis is the result of years of policy decisions that prioritized industry profits over market stability and consumer protection. That assessment came before Senator Rubio voted against the Climate Risk Disclosure Act, which would have required insurers to report their climate exposure. She added, looking toward Rubio. That's not my interpretation, Senator. That comes from your state's own expert. Rubio, visibly unsettled, wrote notes and spoke briefly with an aide. Point of order, Mr. Chairman, he said. The witness is misrepresenting my record and ignoring that those bills included unrelated provisions. Chairman Brown stepped in to maintain order, following standard procedure. Crockett continued, without delay. If Senator Rubio would like to go into the details of these bills, she said evenly, I'm open to that. She raised another document. On page 9, you'll find each piece of legislation, the specific provisions related to insurance markets, and how those measures could have benefited Florida homeowners. Turning to the full committee, she added, this is not about assigning blame or claiming perfection. It's about recognizing what works and what is not within our insurance systems. Families are losing their homes or going bankrupt trying to keep coverage. Looking directly toward the C-SPAN camera, Crockett concluded, Floridians deserve policies based on data, not ideology. They need leadership focused on solutions that stabilize insurance markets, not repeated opposition without viable alternatives. The insurance crisis does not respond to politics. It responds to effective action. The room remained quiet as Crockett yielded her time. The reactions around the table reflected the impact. Rubio's long-standing position had been directly challenged using verified data from his own state and voting record. In less than 10 minutes, his credibility on insurance policy, critical for a hurricane-prone state, had been significantly questioned. Within hours, clips of Crockett's detailed response spread widely on social media. The hashtag related to Florida's insurance crisis began trending nationwide, alongside her data and key statements. Commentators from across the political spectrum responded, as the full hearing gained millions of views. What we saw today was preparation meeting opportunity, said CNN analyst Gloria Borger. Representative Crockett didn't just challenge Senator Rubio's claims. She addressed them directly using documented data from his own record. A widely shared image of Rubio's reaction as Crockett referenced insurance industry contributions quickly became a meme, often captioned to highlight the connection between policy and donors. Conservative outlets initially defended Rubio. Senator Rubio has consistently supported state-based solutions, a Fox News commentator argued. His votes reflect a principled belief that federal involvement can worsen insurance markets. However, those defenses weakened when the Tampa Bay Times published an investigation titled Florida's Insurance Collapse: How We Got Here. The report confirmed Crockett's figures and noted that state-only approaches had not stabilized the market. While we have often supported Senator Rubio, the editorial board wrote, his claim that Florida's insurance crisis is mainly a litigation issue does not align with the available evidence. Homeowners are facing a serious situation that requires both state and federal action. Political philosophy offers little reassurance to families dealing with $10,000 annual premiums or no coverage at all. The political consequences followed quickly. Rubio, long viewed as a defender of Florida's interests, began facing direct questions from both reporters and constituents. His office released a statement accusing Crockett of misusing statistics, but local journalists reviewed the data and found it accurate. Senator Rubio declined our request for comment, reported WFLA Tampa. However, we independently verified Representative Crockett's figures. They align with official records from both the Senate and the Florida Office of Insurance Regulation. Meanwhile, Crockett's public profile rose sharply. Major media outlets requested interviews, her social media following grew rapidly within days, and consumer advocates praised her command of the issue. Florida homeowners began referencing her data in petitions calling for reform at the state level. This was not political theater, a CNBC analyst noted. Crockett demonstrated how policy debates should be handled, with clear evidence and structured analysis. The impact extended to Congress. Lawmakers who had previously allowed Rubio's confident arguments to go unchallenged began arriving at hearings with detailed, state-specific data prepared to respond to similar claims. For Rubio, the effects continued. His reputation as a policy authority on Florida's needs faced increased scrutiny. Newspapers across the state published investigative pieces examining the gap between his public statements and voting record. Marco Rubio came to Washington promising to protect Florida's interests, wrote the Orlando Sentinel. More than a decade later, premiums have tripled, and insurers continue to exit. At what point do results matter more than rhetoric? Potential challengers began to take notice. Within weeks, a former Florida insurance commissioner announced an exploratory campaign against Rubio, emphasizing practical solutions over political positioning. For Crockett, the exchange marked a turning point. She moved from a first-term lawmaker to a nationally recognized voice on insurance and disaster policy. Her fact-driven approach became a reference point for newer representatives aiming to be effective. The key was not just identifying inconsistencies, Crockett later explained on CBS. It was connecting policy decisions to real consequences for people. This is not theoretical. It's a financial crisis affecting families across coastal states. The Rubio-Crockett hearing soon became a case study in political communication courses, demonstrating effective oversight and evidence-based debate. What began as a routine committee discussion evolved into a defining moment, reshaping both lawmakers' political trajectories and influencing the broader national conversation on insurance and climate policy. As the 2024 election approached, analysts pointed to the exchange as evidence that preparation and data can outweigh rhetoric. The lesson was clear. In complex policy debates, substance can still prevail over style. The broader impact of the exchange was seen in disaster preparedness discussions. As states faced increasing climate risks, attention shifted toward practical solutions rather than political positioning. A consumer advocate summarized it clearly. The Rubio-Crockett exchange showed that when a crisis occurs, effective policy, not ideology, is what truly matters. If you found this analysis helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications for more breakdowns of key moments in American politics. Share your thoughts in the comments, and let us know which congressional exchange you'd like us to cover next.